Back to the class, everyone. Summer is just about upon us, and one of the things that historically happens in Galaxy of Heroes every summer is that we get the announcement for a new Galactic Legend. And while Meathead has confirmed multiple times on the event server that we are not getting a road ahead in the month of June, we'll likely be getting one in the months to come, which leads me to the question, if we're going to be getting a Galactic Legend, who could it be? So before we jump into the complete and rampant speculation of the 10 galactic or potential Galactic Legend characters out there, I do want to set a little bit of criteria before we get into it, just to let people know we're not just guessing left and right. And ultimately CG will do whatever they want to do, but this adds a little bit more of a fun to it for me. So number one, a Galactic Legend based off of the 8 characters we have here who are Galactic Legends must be powerful in strength or in influence. And I think it's important to make this distinction because while we do have very powerful characters like Lord Vader and Jedi Master Kenobi, who are not just skilled with a lightsaber but also powerful in the Force, we do have other characters who probably could do little to nothing in hand-to-hand or one-on-one combat like Jabba the Hutt, but he does show a lot of influence, wealth, and power in his respective areas, and I think that needs to be taken into consideration when we're looking at other possible Galactic Legends. They don't just need to be the strongest character ever out there, they just need to have a lot of power, and whether it be in actual strength or in influence. The next thing that they really need to be is they need to be iconic, and I realize it's a very vague term that gets thrown around a lot, but basically what we're going for is known to most. When we think about characters like Jabba the Hutt, again, he doesn't really tick the box of being the most powerful out there, but you could show Jabba the Hutt to almost anyone out there, even people who aren't even fans of Star Wars, and they would know that he is a Star Wars character just because he has existed in so many mediums throughout time, been a part of so many jokes, and overall people just know who he is. Rey obviously had her face plastered all over with the last sequel trilogy. Most people know who she is, whether they like her or not is typically up to them, but most people would have a good idea. Obviously, Princess Leia, again, this is a name that most people who don't even watch Star Wars will recognize. So that's one thing that has to be taken into account, because while there are very powerful characters in Star Wars lore, if most people don't recognize who they are, that typically doesn't mesh well with being a Galactic Legend. Number 3 is they have to be a leader. This one seems a little bit weird because you would think it wouldn't be required to be a Galactic Legend, but we just haven't had any character be here without actually being a leader. And I realize that is an in-game tag, so it's a little bit subjective as to who can be a leader and who cannot. Like, it's a little bit weird that Malik doesn't have a leadership when you look at overall what he's doing in lore, but at the end of the day, it's something that they have to be able to fit at least slightly, because it'd be really weird if we just brought in like a lifter character and they were being led by like a 3 or 4 year old character. Like, for example, Leia is a great example. It would have been super weird if she came into the game and was just automatically under a CLS team and she wasn't the leader. It wouldn't really make sense. It's not how things typically go. Number 4, typically has a counterpart. And this one, I believe, is probably the weakest of the 5 for our criteria, because it's really not set in stone ever since CG switched to the single release all the way back with JMK, or I guess even the revamped version with Jabba. It has always worked out the way up until now, but I don't really think they're as tied to that as they used to be. Also, by counterpart, I just mean one light side, one dark side. Galactic Legend, while they might not come out at the same time, they typically reflect each other well. JML and C being one of the examples, Rey and SLKR, Leia and Jabba, and then Lord Vader and Jedi Master Kenobi being the final one. And 5 typically has previous versions. Again, Jabba is going to be the one to break this, but if we look around at the other 8 characters at the top, or the other 7 characters at the top here, they all have not one, but multiple other versions of themselves that were in the game prior to the release. And again, this just makes a lot of sense. If you were going to have an iconic character become a Galactic Legend, then it would make sense that we would have already bothered to make some other version of them come into the game. So with that criteria in mind, let's actually get over to our list of who I think could eventually fit the bill for Galactic Legend. And the first 3, we're going to go through all the positives, or why they would likely be a Galactic Legend or why they wouldn't be, or if now is a good time or later is a good time. But the first character I want to talk about is going to be Grand Admiral Thrawn himself. Now, we obviously do have a version of Grand Admiral Thrawn, and I know his art currently resembles the live action, but this character really doesn't. He is specifically made to embody the Thrawn who is in the Empire during the series of Rebels. We know that because we got him during that series. In addition, they didn't even retroactively give him the Imperial Remnant tag to really resemble his place in the newer Ahsoka series. By the way, this is going to have spoilers from either The Mandalorian or the Ahsoka series. We will not be talking about Acolyte just because very brand new and has really nothing to do with any of the characters we're going to be talking about, but I felt that was important to mention there. So obviously Thrawn is a character who has a really great reputation and has become iconic in the Star Wars universe, not only through his portrayals in the series Rebels and Ahsoka, but in addition to that, he was kind of the biggest deal ever between the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy with the Timothy Zahn books. They're fantastic, and they really captivated a lot of people out there. In addition to be iconic, he's obviously very powerful in his influence, not only at the current time that we're seeing him, which would be kind of with Imperial Remnant, but even before that, he had a lot of pull, not only with the Empire, but also with his own Chiss people. So there's a lot that they could do with him that lets him tick a lot of the boxes. Obviously very much a leader. In addition to that, there is one faction out there sitting around that really could, in theory, have a Galactic Legend. We already have one for Empire, but Imperial Remnant is technically free. Now, while there are all those reasons going for him why he could be a Galactic Legend, I don't think he will be the next one. Mainly because, and we're going to run into this problem, we'll call it a problem, with the next two as well, we haven't really finished his arc. We really haven't gotten to hit the final version of Thrawn in the current lore. We obviously still have Ahsoka Season 2 as well as the Mandalorian movie coming up, where his character will certainly be advanced. So it would be really weird right now to get Galactic Legend Thrawn when all we are going off of is his very small appearance in the Ahsoka series, which really, I mean, it was great to see him. It was great to see all the characters that came along with him. But at the same time, there is much more that is going to be coming in the future. As far as what characters will be required for him, that would be very easy. They could easily release several marquees, like a Hermit Ezra and or I believe it was Enoch that was one of his really cool, goons is kind of a harsh word for him, but one of the people who was working under him. Will be really fun for marquee characters, and then they could just require you to have all of the original Phoenix at R7 or something like that. So from a requirement standpoint, he's definitely easy to do. Next up is going to be Din Djarin, aka the Mandalorian. This one is very much along the same lines of Thrawn. This is a character that has been built up for the last several years and keeps going higher and higher and higher as far as his overall influence goes, how many people know about him, and whether or not he's a leader. But he's going to run into the exact same issues as Thrawn, where the character arc really isn't finished. We haven't really reached his full potential. And one of the other problems with him, and I should have mentioned this with Thrawn as well, the faction that we're talking about that he would be leading, the Mandalorians, literally just got an update. Bo-Katan Mandalore is a very new character, so it wouldn't make a lot of sense right now to immediately eclipse her when she just came out by a new Mandalorian Galactic Legend. Thrawn is would run into the same exact issue because we also just got Dark Trooper Moff Gideon, who is our really only leader for the Imperial Remnant faction. So it wouldn't make much sense to immediately replace him. So they both run into that similar issue. Next up is going to be Ahsoka Tano Fulcrum, and again, going to be very similar to the other two characters. She does have a lot of potential to be a GL. A lot of people know who she is. She is kind of a fan favorite, certainly a leader in a lot of regards. We already have many other versions of her, but at the same time, character arc is not quite finished. She still has a little bit more to come with Ahsoka Season 2. And in addition to that, the Unaligned Force User tag, which is probably what faction she would be slotted into from a Galactic Legend standpoint, just got an update with Malicos added into it. So to have her come in and already pretty much completely destroy it would seem a little bit odd. You would think that they would want to flesh out that team a little bit longer. And quite frankly, I don't think there would be enough other Unaligned Force users that would be associated with her that they would be able to release to get her going all at once. Now, moving a little bit away from the newer series characters, I want to talk a little bit about the Old Republic. Revan is a huge name out there. KOTOR and SWGOH as well have been one of the largest games for all of Star Wars, and they attracted a lot of people with these very iconic characters that are also very powerful. That being said, Revan kind of just got these two versions several years ago and then hasn't been touched since. And one of the reasons why I like the idea of a new Revan, like a Revan Reborn, is because they also didn't finish KOTOR 2 entirely. We were still missing characters like the Exile, and even later, way later, and not KOTOR 2, but it would be Satele Shan. So I think this would be a great opportunity to maybe between a Conquest character or a Legendary or some combination of the two to bring in a whole slew of new characters to kind of help reinforce where they're at, and then ultimately build up to Revan Reborn, which would obviously require the new Marquise in addition to having a bunch of the older characters relict. There was a lot of really fun concepts that they could do with him. They could finally do something useful with Hondo's what is it called? Neutral tag, and maybe even letting you pick which alignment he gets to go with, just because of the complexities of who Revan is as far as morality goes, giving you a little bit of freedom and agency as the actual player in using him and deciding what you want to do with him. I think that would be a really cool concept. I think we've had a big enough a break from the Old Republic for people to be willing to go back into it. That being said, the Revan that we would get would probably be the Galactic Legend for the Old Republic, as both the Sith and the Jedi kind of have been pretty busy with their own respective Galactic Legends. Now, speaking of the Old Republic, this is going to be the first character, and the only character, by the way, we're going to talk about that doesn't have previous versions. I kind of listed that as a requirement before, but obviously if Jabba was able to break the rule being 1 of 8, if we're going to be doing 1 of 10, we can do it as well. And the Galactic Legend, who would be for Sith Empire, is going to be none other than Vitiate. Now, this one becomes pretty hard because I realize there are several versions of them, and they all kind of have their pros and cons. Now, the big difficulty with actually bringing him in as a character is we're missing a lot of the groundwork that goes with him. As I mentioned before with Revan, it would only take 1 more Legendary and maybe about 5 Marquise to really flesh out all of his story, specifically with KOTOR leading up to the exile, who would eventually, go to get him. But with Vitiate, there's a lot there, and it really almost independent of which 3 versions they would want to bring into the game. There's a lot of a supporting cast there that we just don't have, that they would need to backtrack. I don't necessarily think Darth Revan and Malgus are a launch pad enough to get there. So while it's a cool concept, I think it's going to be pretty far away, specifically because we don't have the roster to build up to them. We would need a lot more characters, but it does pretty much fit the field perfectly for being powerful in strength or in influence, as Vitiate really ticked that box completely, probably better than almost anyone else on our list. And in addition to that, he is somewhat iconic. I realize he is kind of just shoved off to a video game, so he probably is lesser on that scale, but he makes up for enough of it in other ways. Next up is going to be Yoda, and Yoda for me is very much along the lines of a Darth Vader, Jabba the Hutt, Anakin type of character, where everyone just knows who he is. And while we already do have 2 of them in game, and I wouldn't want just another repeat of Grandmaster Yoda for the Galactic Republic, because we already have Jedi Master Kenobi as the Galactic Legend, I think it would be really interesting for them to eventually work their way in Galaxy of Heroes to the High Republic and fit Grandmaster Yoda as their Galactic Legend, finally allowing his time to shine as a leader. Again, it's a little bit weird that we have the Grandmaster not even ever use his leadership ability. Ever since Bastila came to the game, was superior than him, and then, the other 5 Jedi leaders that came after that pretty much always relegated him to another spot, which, quite frankly, that's fine. He's great on a lot of squads, but he's not actually gotten to be a leader. Now, the only problem with this is going to be very similar to the problem with this shit, is we don't have, any High Republic characters at all. I don't think we have one. And while I would love to get them in game, similar to Darth Vitiate's supporting cast, we don't have them. And the amount of time that it would take to build up to that would be a little bit crazy. I guess they could take a lot of the characters that we currently have in game that have a relation to Yoda, but I mean, it would... I feel like you would just get really overlappy really quickly with a lot of the other Galactic Legends. I know they do that to some extent, but at the same time, I would like to see more of the High Republic building up to it. Next up is going to be a Separatist GL. And this one, I have one of the biggest problems with this. While I would love to see a Separatist Galactic Legend, I don't know what they would do. So obviously we have Count Dooku and General Grievous here. And if they were to make another more enhanced version of them, they can do that, but I can't give you one differing criteria between Count Dooku and Darth Tyrannus, other than the fact that he has 2 different names, and we could lean more into one than the other. The Count Dooku we have is obviously from Attack of the Clones / the Clone Wars series, and his character doesn't really change at all between the two. Grievous, very similarly, he's with him being in episode 3 and the Clone Wars, he's pretty much the same guy affiliated with the same people around the same power level the entire time. So I don't know how we get a Separatist Galactic Legend out of the two of them. I would just like to see it, I guess. I mean, give us a Revenge of the Sith General Grievous and label this one the Clone Wars, or maybe give us the 2003 General Grievous. Now that would be something else. For those who don't know, there was a cartoon that came out prior to the Clone Wars that had Grievous in it, and my goodness, was he a treat. Yeah, so there is a little bit they could do there. I just don't know how they would differ. Now, I guess in one thing to say against what I'm currently saying right now is we literally just did get a Master Qui-Gon who the only difference between him and original Qui-Gon is the poncho. Like, that's it. They're from the same exact time period, doing the same exact thing, affiliated with the same exact people. The only difference is the poncho. So, I mean, I guess give Grievous a poncho and maybe we can call it good. I don't know. Next up is going to be a personal favorite of mine. I don't think it'll happen just because they're not really in the spotlight right now. So from a selling point, I don't see how well it would go. But I would love to have a Galactic Legend Maul specifically outfitted to be the leader of Crimson Dawn, a new faction, or maybe a crime syndicate faction. The reason why I want this so much is, yes, I do like Maul, but in addition to that, that would give them the opportunity to finally flesh out and give us a lot of those crime syndicate characters. Like, let his team be made up of Dryden Voss, someone from the Black Sun, someone from the Pikes, and just fill out this essentially round table of Crimson Dawn characters. And it would be really easy to do to give us this Galactic Legend, because all they would have to do is give us 4 new marquees, of which I just previously mentioned, and then go around and cherry pick other characters that were a part of Maul's story, whether they be from Rebels, or from the Clone Wars, or from the Phantom Menace, make them as requirements at R7 or whatever it has to be, add in the new characters, and voila, you have an instant Galactic Legend. Again, the big thing that Maul has going against him right now is the fact that nobody's talking about Maul. He's not in any of the current series, so that he does have that against him. But I think it would be a really cool opportunity, and honestly, it would be exactly like how they did Jabba. They bring in 4 marquee characters. Those 4 marquee characters go on his team. They make you relic up a bunch of other random stuff, and you're done. Now, we do have 2 slots left for both the Dark Side Scoundrel Galactic Legend and a Light Side Scoundrel Galactic Legend. And I will have you know, I specifically left this to the last because I know that every single time that I even mention bringing a new Han into the game, people get up in arms about it because we already have 5 of the same character when we're still missing key characters, specifically like Darth Vitiate. So I realize that. I realize there's 5 Hans. I realize we could also get another Han as a lifter for Leia, but he makes the most sense for a light side scoundrel. Again, going back to the criteria we were kind of working with here in the beginning, iconic, powerful, and influence is a leader. Typically as a counterpart, typically as previous versions, he ticks all the boxes, maybe more collectively than any other character on this list. And to me, it's a little bit weird, and I realize the game still has to continue to release new characters, but it's a little odd to me that from the original trilogy, we've got Luke, and we've got Leia, and Darth Vader, and Palpatine, like all of them have their own Galactic Legend variations, but Han doesn't. And I guess you could lump Chewie into that too. He is kind of lumpy. But between the two of them, or maybe even the duo of the two, I feel like we could get another Galactic Legend specifically outfitted for the Scoundrel faction. Because quite frankly, Jabba didn't do a very good job of it. Number one, he's not actually a scoundrel. He didn't even get that tag. But in addition to that, while all of his characters that he works with are scoundrels, there's no specific scoundrel synergy. It's mostly focused around Hutt Cartel with a little bit of bounty hunter and or smuggler mixed in. And then obviously Boba would be the counterpart for the dark side scoundrel. Now again, this would be fairly easy because as Boba Fett's character progresses, we would just get another one on top of it. Right now we have Boba Fett from the original trilogy, Boba Fett, Scion of Jango, who really is from Mandalorian Season 2. They could easily give us another enhanced version specifically from the Book of Boba Fett, maybe with a new Fennec that has newer synergies. I don't know, I'm kind of running out of ideas. We're on number 9/10 right now. So those are my thoughts for 10 possible Galactic Legends out there. Let me know in the comments what other characters you would like to see. Again, I realize we have a lot of repeats here, but that is characteristic of how Galactic Legends work. So we're just dealing with what we got. But until the next time, thank you for watching and stay awesome.